John chapter 11. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." When he heard this, Jesus said, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it." Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. And then he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." "But Rabbi," they said, "a short while ago the Jews there tried to stone you, and yet you are going back?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by this world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light." After he had said this, he went on to tell them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up." His disciples replied, "Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better." Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So then he told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." Then Thomas, also known as Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she replied. "I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world." After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. "The teacher is here," she said, "and is asking for you." When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. "But Lord," said Martha, the sister of the dead man, "by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days." Then Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen, and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." Therefore many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary, and had seen what Jesus did, believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. What would the Lord have you learn from Martha in this passage? Often, we hear of Martha being chided by Jesus for her busyness, as Jesus heralded Mary for her willingness to give him her full attention. This is certainly an important component of the story. Jesus wants us to think through our priorities. Where does he fall on that list? As with Mary, he should be our number 1 priority and thus the focus of our love, attention, and time. People often fail to recognize that if Martha had not extended hospitality to Jesus and the disciples, Mary would not have had the opportunity to sit at Jesus' feet. Martha did the work to open their home and then care for those who had gathered there. Water was out for their feet, there was a clean and comfortable spot to gather and listen to Jesus, and a meal was being prepared. Martha tended to the details that would bless Jesus and all those who were there with Jesus that day. Martha was likely that perfectionist who wanted everything to be just so, perfect in every way for her guests. Jesus was just glad to be there with Mary and Martha and grateful for a place to gather with those he loved. It was about quality time together, not the perfect place or meal. Yet, I am sure everyone there would enjoy and appreciate a home-cooked meal. Who knows what these men ate while traveling together? Martha's attention and focus on opening her home and providing a meal would surely be a blessing to all. Where Martha was rebuked was in her attitude. Was she delighting in her gift of hospitality, or allowing her perfectionism to rob her of the joy? Was she so worried about all the details that she missed out on sitting at Jesus' feet? We can learn many important lessons from Martha, good and bad. The Lord would have you delight in your spiritual gifts, whether hospitality, teaching, prayer, service, etc. Then, the Lord would also have you always choose the highest call, that relationship with Jesus. When that relationship is strong, you will have the power, strength, and joy to use your gift to serve God and others. Reflection. How are you using your spiritual gifts to serve God and His church? In what ways might you need an attitude adjustment about the spirit in which you serve? Every person and every gift is vital in building God's kingdom. May you find delight in the Lord today, and then delight in exercising your gifts.